Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the Newstalk Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. The People's National Congress Reform wants government to abandon plans to build a natural gas pipeline and instead ship the fuel. A Bishop's High School teacher has been freed of sex charges. In the region, Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. And Barbados is digitizing its national identification cards. And you'll have your latest international news coming from the BBC. Do stay tuned.
Advertise with us on Newstalk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. President Irfaan Ali, on the occasion of Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary, is calling on Guyanese to make sweeping changes to their personal attitudes.
Attitudes set in misrepresentation, political mischief, and destruction will not take us forward. The rapid advancement of Guyana requires us to change the way we think, act, and behave. The scale of development dictates that our thought process must now address more complex and dynamic issues.
He says his government welcomes constructive criticism, healthy debates, exchange of views, and critical examinations of policies, initiatives, programs, and plans to advance the One Guyana initiative.
These discussions must not be based on a selfish agenda, biasness, perception, propaganda, and feelings. Instead, they must be firmly rooted in facts and a pragmatic understanding of what is required in this rapidly changing Guyana.
President Irfaan Ali speaking at a flag-raising ceremony to usher in Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary. The event was held in the forecourt of the Parliament building last night. Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, PNCR Aubrey Norton, is promising to remove income tax. He reiterated this promise during a message to mark Guyana's 52nd Republic anniversary.
The PNCR wishes to make it clear that as your government is waiting, as part of the coalition, we will remove the burden of personal income tax from our people. We see this as an enduring obligation to you, given the current favorable economic circumstances from oil and gas.
The PNCR leader is also urging an end to racial discrimination, discrimination against foreign and local investors, and corruption, including alleged bribe-taking by top government officials.
It concerns the PNCR that Guyana is getting so much income, but our people are getting less. And at the same time, the high cost of living is eating out the little that we get. On this, the 52nd anniversary of our republic, we call on the Ali regime to stop serving their elite, their family, and their friends, and ensure that our people benefit from our national patrimony. Our windfall from oil and gas should not be used to make the rich richer, but rather to eradicate poverty and give our people the reason to celebrate.
Leader of the People's National Congress Reform, Aubrey Norton. The People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, on Tuesday argued against the government building a more than $1 billion natural gas pipeline. The more than 200-kilometer pipeline, which will be financed by ExxonMobil from Cost Oil, will take natural gas from the Liza well to a gas-powered electricity plant to be built by the government at Wales West Bank, Demerara. PNCR Central Executive Member, retired Rear Admiral Gary Best, says broadly that shipping the gas will be better.
In particular, the use of ISO containers to ferry liquefied natural gas to shore is a much less expensive and more environmentally friendly transportation method. We are advised that LNG ISO tank containers are seen in the industry as the easiest and most flexible means of conveyance to transport gases. Apart from the massive cost savings relative to gas pipelines, the LNG tank container option would allow the country to export excess gas to several overseas markets. Clearly, this is a better option since such export is not possible in the pipeline project.
He declines to provide technical details to justify his party's preference for shipping. Instead, he wants the bipartisan Parliamentary Committee on Natural Resources to discuss the various choices.
I don't think this is the forum to provide technical details. What I can say to you that we do have our experts and we're willing to sit and discuss those details with the government. Secondly, there are a number of institutions and organizations that also have information in relation to not only oil and gas and natural resource, but many issues that afflict the nation. So it is important for the PPP to utilize the democratic mechanisms within the Constitution, within the Parliament. There is a Parliamentary Sectoral Committee on the Natural Resource. Therefore, we call on the government to use that committee, bring the public and other experts to give evidence and information concerning the oil and gas, natural resource, and also a pipeline.
Guyana, Suriname, and Brazil have been in talks about the construction of a natural gas pipeline to send gas to a huge electricity generation plant in Brazil. Known as Arco North Project, it has been studied by the Inter-American Development Bank. Thousands more water users across Guyana's coast will have to pay rates by meter. The Guyana Water Incorporated GWI says it will be installing 20,000 meters during this year with the aim of increasing metering to 85%. The utility company says this is the continuation of a robust metering program which saw over 15,000 meters being installed in 2021. That included the replacement of close to 5,000 non-functional or faulty meters. Based on 2019 data, only 53% of consumers along the coast have water meters. Among the areas to be metered during the year in Region 2 are Anna Regina, Cotton Field, Lima, Mainstay, Reliance, and Walton Hall. In Region 3, the metering scheduled includes Anna Catarina, Denamstel, Cornelia Ida, Good Fortune, Port Droin, and Versailles. On the east bank, Demerara, Eccles Farm, Great Diamond, and Little Diamond, and on the east coast of Demerara, Better Hope, Industry, Luzignan, Ogle, and Happy Acres. The Georgetown metering schedule includes Kitty, Lamaha Gardens, Queenstown, South Rheinfeld Gardens, and Bel Air Gardens. In Region 6, metering will be done in areas which include Williamsburg, Rose Hall Tongue, Nig, and Port Morant, while in Region 10, metering will be carried out in Amelia's Ward, Linden, among other areas. Metered GWI customers are billed based on the amount of water consumed, and this allows them to manage their consumption to avoid a higher reading. Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony says mental pressures associated with COVID-19 pandemic appear to be easing. He made the observation during his latest COVID-19 update.
I think at the beginning, when people were locked away because of the curfew, and there was a lot of restrictions of movement, I think at that point in time, people found it more challenging. Now that the society is more open up, I don't think people are so confined, and some of the challenges and anxieties that people might have had in the early part of the pandemic, that has eased somewhat.
The health minister says that a fair number of persons are being affected by the long-term effects of COVID infection.
So we have seen a subset of patients who would have fatigue, who would have things like brain fog. They don't remember in the midst of a conversation, they forget things. And that's partly due to inflammation of the brain. So this is something that we have to pay attention to, and that's why the unit that we have set up to deal with long COVID would be assessing these types of patients.
Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony. Bishop's High School teacher Sion Jackson was Tuesday found not guilty of one count of sexual activity with a child under 18 years old by abusing a position of trust. Attorney at law Nigel Hughes said the jury was unable to arrive at a verdict on the remaining 3 counts on the same charge. Mr. Hughes also says that in the remaining 3 counts, the verdict was 9 not guilty. Mr. Jackson was represented by Savannah Barnwell, Jerome Kahn, and Nigel Hughes. Back in 2018, the magistrate court had found that there had been sufficient evidence for Mr. Jackson to be tried by a judge and jury. He had been accused of committing the offense between December 2010 and May 2011 at Durban Street Lodge on a female who is now 26 years old. The man who was arrested allegedly attempting to leave Guyana for the United States with cocaine in fried rice has pleaded not guilty. The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit says that 28-year-old Esmond German Anderson was remanded to prison until March 8. Kanu says he was held with 6 pounds of cocaine in frozen fried rice minutes before he was due to leave on a JetBlue flight for New York last Friday. His lawyer told Magistrate Judy Latchman that someone at the airport put the cocaine in his unlocked suitcase. Mr. Anderson was employed in Guyana by a leading oil sector support company, and he earned more than $200,000 per month as a warehouse specialist. Head of Kanu James Singh says the arrest of Anderson with drugs is a lesson to young people not to be tempted to get rich quickly. A taxi driver of Tushan East Bank Essequibo was last night stabbed several times and robbed by 2 men who pretended to be passengers. A woman with a baby also boarded the car at Tushan and asked to be taken to Crane Housing Scheme, West Coast, Demerara. The taxi driver, 26-year-old Insaf Zakir, called Gaddafi, told police that they all escaped on foot after the robbery. Mr. Zakir says the man who was seated behind him grabbed him by his neck and demanded that he hand over his valuables. The taxi driver says that as he resisted, the same man stabbed him several times to his chest. He also told police that the other man then relieved him of his Samsung Galaxy A20 cellular phone valued $48,000. Mr. Zakir is hospitalized in a stable condition. Checks were made for the perpetrators, but they were not found. Now for the news in the region. Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. Reuters news agency says the remarks appeared aimed at raising American alarm as world powers try to conclude a new nuclear deal with Tehran. Venezuela said in 2012 that Iran was helping it build drones for self-defense. The two countries, both OPEC members and long at loggerheads with Washington, also cooperate on oil exports. Briefing U.S. Jewish leaders in Jerusalem, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz showed photographs of what he described as Iranian Mohajir UAV unmanned aerial vehicle in Venezuela. Iran denies supplying military drones to any of its allies and has denied seeking nuclear arms or supporting terrorism. Venezuela's information ministry did not immediately reply to an email seeking comment on Gantz's remarks. Israel supported the 2018 withdrawal of the United States from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, and with Washington now taking part in negotiations to revive the pact, has urged caution. Barbados is rolling out new digital identification cards. The announcement comes as the Barbados Licensing Authority is to undergo urgent reform and a private company is to be hired to deal with the backlog of driver's license. The Barbados government says that the new digital cards will also replace driver's license. Details from Barbados Today.
Barbadians will soon have their new digital national Trident identification cards. Word of this from Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, Davidson Ishmael, one Monday announced that the new cards will be rolled out in the coming months. The new digital ID cards will replace the current laminated identification cards and also driver's licenses. In addition, persons can also opt to have their fingerprints and medical information embedded in the new cards.
This new Trident ID card will be launched during this first quarter of 2022. And I can assure the House through you, Mr. Speaker, that this project is at an extremely advanced stage of its development. And we are confident that, barring no unforeseen circumstances, that we shall be well able to deliver this exciting new Trident ID card in the coming months. Most of the technical work, Mr. Speaker, has been completed, and my technical team is currently in the phase of beta testing all of the technical aspects of the solution to ensure that we have compliance with international data security standards. And Mr. Speaker, may I assure this House and the people of Barbados by extension and through you that we are checking every detail connected with this card.
Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology Davidson Ishmael ending that report from Barbados Today. Trinidad and Tobago is depending on natural gas to rebuild its economy as well as other economies. We get more from TTT News Online.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says natural gas will provide the energy needed to assist in rebuilding economies as the world emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister's statement came during his address at the 6th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum in Doha on Tuesday. Dr. Rowley said as a country impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, Trinidad and Tobago can identify with the theme for this year's summit, championing natural gas post-COVID-19 recovery and sustainable development.
Pre-COVID-19, the domestic energy sector, based on the government strategies, was enjoying a major upturn. The pandemic curtailed this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects.
Prime Minister Rowley said the pandemic affected this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects. He added, however, that recovery is on track.
In the medium to long term, several gas projects are in the appraisal and sanctioning phases. These include deepwater projects with estimated gas reserves of 6.6 trillion cubic feet and the Manatee cross-border field, which adjoins the Venezuelan Lauren field.
The Prime Minister and a delegation which included Energy Minister Stuart Young left for Qatar last Friday for the 6th Summit of Heads of State and Government of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. The summit began on February 20 and ended Tuesday.
That report coming from TTT News Online. And lastly, in the region in Antigua, the St. John's Magistrate Court has granted bail to a woman believed to have made COVID-19 vaccination cards for her own financial benefit. Antigua Observer reports that Jamisha Millwood was charged with 21 counts of forgery for allegedly forging 21 of the vaccination cards last year. She made her first appearance before Chief Magistrate Joanne Walsh, represented by attorney Lawrence Daniels, and was granted bail in the sum of $1,850 with a $925 cash component. She also has to report to a police station 3 days each week, provide 2 local sureties, and surrender all of her travel documents. The nurse allegedly charged over $370 per card when she allegedly committed the offense at the Multipurpose Cultural Center on November 13, 2021. The 29-year-old mother of 2 was said to be an employee of the Sir Leicester Bird Medical Center and was a volunteer at vaccination stations. The Health Minister, Sir Mulwin Joseph, disclosed in November last year that the woman had been relieved of her duties until the matter has been resolved. The defendant is said to make her second appearance for her committal hearing on March 17. And here now is your international news coming from the BBC.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. Ukraine is to impose a state of emergency and has urged its citizens to leave Russia as the government in Kiev steps up its response to what it calls intensified aggression from Moscow. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for tougher sanctions on Russia in response to its decision to recognise the breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent. James Waterhouse reports from Kiev.
Officials have decided to bring in a state of emergency for 30 days, which will be voted on by MPs first. Measures are expected to include increased patrols, transport restrictions and checkpoints. It won't cover the Donetsk and Luhansk regions because of the fighting there. Ukraine's border service has also announced more restrictions along the boundaries with Russia, Belarus and the separatist-occupied territories in the Donbass region. These measures, along with the Foreign Ministry urging Ukrainians to leave Russia immediately, reflect the diplomatic efforts running out of road.
European Union sanctions against Russia are expected to come into effect today. Diplomats have indicated the measures will include a travel ban for all members of the lower house of the Russian parliament. Banks helping to fund separatists in eastern Ukraine will also be targeted. The diplomats say tougher action will be held in reserve. The French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said European countries still wanted diplomacy to succeed.
Cette main tendue reste toujours là.
This hand that we're reaching out to Russia still exists, because nothing is worse than fighting a war. But then, when should we believe President Putin's word? I don't know if anyone knows, but that doesn't prevent us from showing pressure, demands, firmness, and a willingness to fight to avoid resorting to the solution of war.
Russia has denounced sanctions imposed on it by the United States and others, describing them as futile and counterproductive. The Foreign Ministry in Moscow has promised a strong response. Yevgeny Popov is a talk show host and MP who has himself been the target of sanctions. He was asked by the BBC for his reaction to the measures.
Okay, I'm not gonna say that sanctions against my country is funny. Sanctions against our economy, it's a serious step. But our economy is strong. It's slow, it's really slow, but it's strong. And we gonna live normally.
In other news, a tropical cyclone has made landfall in southeastern Madagascar. The island's National Risk Management Office said Cyclone Emnati hit an area north of the city of Manakara last night. The storm weakened slightly as it reached the coast, but wind speeds were still about 100 kilometres an hour. Madagascar is still recovering from another cyclone last month. World news from the BBC. Hackers have retaken control of more than 30 government websites in Mozambique. On Monday, the authorities said they had repelled an attack, but a group called Yemeni Hackers said they were now in charge of sites, including that of Mozambique's Defence Ministry and Water Agency. The hackers posted a message demanding a ransom within 24 hours. Chinese officials say they've arrested the husband of a woman who appeared in a social media video chained by the neck inside a rural shack, sparking an outcry. The man, along with 2 other people who've been arrested, is accused of human trafficking. Will Leonardo reports.
The video of the chained woman inside a mud hut caused immediate outrage and shock in China last month. She appeared unwell and was later said to be suffering from schizophrenia. Investigators said she'd been sold as a bride twice before ending up married to the arrested man in rural Jiangsu province, with whom she's had 8 children despite China's strict family planning rules. Several local officials have now been sacked. The authorities have been under pressure to act. There's been extensive discussion on social media in China, despite attempts to censor the topic. It's also raised questions about the plight of women in rural areas, where brides can be in short supply because of the traditional preference for boys under a long-standing one-child policy.
The Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has said Tehran will open a trade office in the Qatari capital Doha. Returning from his 2-day visit to Qatar, President Raisi told journalists the move would promote investment opportunities. During his trip, he met the Emir of Qatar and investors. They signed 14 agreements. Police in the Indian state of Maharashtra have arrested a senior minister, Nawab Malik, on charges of money laundering linked to gangs in Mumbai. His supporters have described the arrest by the Federal Financial Investigation Agency as a political vendetta by the governing Hindu nationalist BJP. He's from the Nationalist Congress Party. BBC News.
And that was your international news from the BBC. Here now is a recap of the highlights. The People's National Congress Reform wants government to abandon plans to build a natural gas pipeline and instead ship the fuel. A Bishop's High School teacher has been freed of 6 charges. In the region, Israel accused Iran on Tuesday of planning to arm drones supplied to Venezuela with precision-guided munitions. And Barbados is digitizing its national identification cards. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. Happy Mashamani.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/dem